Welcome, everyone. The following is about a 10-minute excerpt of the first lecture of my course on Goethe's Faust. The entire lecture is an hour and 20 minutes long. And if you'd like to see the full lecture and 7 more, then you are now cordially invited to join the course. The link to enroll is in the description of this video. It's also up here somewhere. So join the course. We also begin next week, if you're watching this in due time, on Sunday, April the 13th, 2025, that is. So if you happen to see this in time, do join the live lectures and seminars which begin in a week from now. Everything is explained on the enrollment page, and we're going to go through the entirety of Goethe's Faust Part 1, and we're going to take it slow, only a few scenes every week to read so that we can really soak this in and go deep into this myth of modernity that Goethe has written for us. So, again, thank you very much, and I hope to see you inside. Thank you. That the world is a theater in which all must play their part, as above, so below, is reflected in two of the opening portals of the Faust, a play which goes well beyond the ordinary Faust stories of Marlowe and German folk theater, and well beyond the historical Dr. Johann Faustus, who apparently was a master at projecting images of all sorts of creatures and ancient heroes up on the wall, in of course a pre modern form, or for sort of an early kind of cinema, you could almost say, to scare and shock his audience. And the prologue in Heaven, which comes after the prelude in the theater in Goethe's Faust, leads the reader into the world in which modern man finds himself, half trapped still in the Christian faith, a benevolent God still looking out for his most beloved creature created in his image, half ready aware that new gods await, but that also in this God-forsaken time, from which the gods have flown, as Hölderlin poetizes, a poet who Goethe, by the way, did not approve of for his failure to be able to describe mundane human life as significant in the cosmic play as well. Hölderlin had a tendency to stride all too far away. So, what remains for the human being in this age is to overcome himself and not fall for mere sensualism, not to become a mere Lustmensch, a man of lust and pleasure and desire, or to borrow an expression from Nietzsche, not to become the last man. Of this, the prelude in the theater warns, as we also shall see, and also the entire play. That's one of the threads that goes through the play. From the beginning, thus, macro and microcosm are in play and are both deeply intertwined. Striving, continuous striving above and beyond oneself, that is the task. Striving, not desiring so much for more, but for a striving for more that is appropriately orientated. That is what Faust finds himself confronted with, this challenge or this demand to be able to strive for an enhanced way of living, a higher mode of life. And Faust is of a longing to know what holds the world together, but also to be able to exercise control over that. That the true Faustian soul is, however, not about only control for the sake of control only, is what we shall see the further we read. Magic, for example, plays a role, also still in Goethe's version of Faust. That should give us pause. The irrational remains irrevocably married to the rational. Who Faust is and why Faust is a myth of modernity stretching from early modernity to today, we shall also explore here. that this work is fragmentary, of course, plays a part in this. Goethe understood that the figure of Faust is more than the record of a man's life. He wrote on the Faust his entire life. He even wrote the Urfaust. Now, you could say that it was only published posthumously, but I think it's important that this was given the title Urfaust, be that by Goethe himself or others, the primordial Faust, in a sense to give the appearance that Goethe really writes the primordial Faust story. It's not just his own primordial Faust that leads to the two main parts, but I think it's an Ur-Faust really in the sense of it encapsulates what the figure of Faust is, this mythical figure of modernity, one of the few myths really of modernity. So the title Urfaust, I think, does imply that to a large extent, and Goethe wished to capture the entelechy of the Faustian spirit, a young spirit, yet indeed. It is Goethe's great and lasting achievement to have written the myth of and for modernity, a myth we still have to come to terms with. For Faust encapsulates the spirit of modern man in its entirety, the search for the formula of the world, the desire for absolute knowledge, the kind of knowledge reserved only for an omnipotent God, the God from whom, as Spengler mentions almost in passing in The Decline of the Occidental Faustian man wants to steal knowledge away from this God, which is, let's be honest, a foreign God. And it is a peculiar relationship exists with the supposed one true omniscient omnipotent God right from the beginning. It's the monks, Spengler points out, monks who want to steal knowledge away from this omniscient, omnipotent God. And that's what's driving the Faustian age from its very inception 1,000 years ago. Now, Faust also embodies the deep suspicion of European man. That's Goethe's Faust now. That, by the way, Spengler rescues his entire apology of Christianity by saying that Christianity was something radically new when it came to Europe and when it began to become Occidental 1,000 years ago, really. And he gives no argument for it. He says it's something new, exclamation point. The Faust embodies the deep suspicion of European man that Christianity is not ultimately his religion. For Goethe's Faust is decidedly post-Christian. And by the way, also the God that's presented in the prologue in heaven is no longer really a Christian God. Faust also embodies the deep suspicion of European man that Christianity is not at all his religion, but also that his longing and desire for knowledge, and certainly not only for sexual desire, but in fact for reuniting with antiquity, is what the deep longing is a deep longing in the Faustian soul, one that Spengler, by the way, entirely, almost you could say, ignores. Goethe's Faust is a man of two souls, as we shall see. Thus also Faustian man is two-souled, not monodirectional, as Spengler maintained. But Faust requires a counterpart, Mephistopheles, who is not the devil in personam. Just who Mephistopheles is will be equally significant in order to grasp at the true scope of the myth of Faust which Goethe has left us. I shall say right now, and I'll mention this again in a future lecture, that it is equally mistaken to read this as a psychological play. Goethe is not Schiller. Schiller writes psychological plays where the psychological state changes and a higher psychological insight or grasp of a situation, changes the character, etc. That's not what's going on here. Mephistopheles is not a part of the psyche of 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 Faust. He's not. He is a devil, and he is, you could say, um, a living metaphor also to carry something over, to carry something across, and is not simply part of the Faustian psyche. So he's not the dark shadow of Faust, or some sort of archetype that's hiding in the soul, etc. None of this. You don't have to insinuate any of this stuff. But we need to understand that Mephistopheles is at once an old German kind of Christian little helper devil, while at the same time also has another dimension from myth. Now, when we read Goethe's Faust, and we'll see that Hermes or Mercury will be important in this regard. We rather, in Goethe's Faust, I think we find metaphors, living analogies, allegories that come alive. And for this epic poem, even though written in principle for the stage, although almost never performed in toto, uh, it addresses the entirety of Occidental memory and avenues out of Christianity, which would retain certain aspects of Christianity. And a tragedy, to quote from Heidegger, is neither performance nor is it an act. A tragedy is rather the battle of the new gods against the old.